It was dark and quiet, the cool cobbles beneath Remen's back an oddly soothing sensation. For a while, he stared at the pitch-black sky, wondering if it had all been just some terrible nightmare. He wanted to close his eyes, to rest while he felt at peace. "Remy? Are you awake, Remy?" Danny's voice caught him by surprise, and slowly he lifted himself into a seated position. His jaw fell as he saw who sat in front of him. Danny and Koito, just how he remembered them. They looked happy, unlike when Remen's face fell. It hadn't been a nightmare. Looking up at his childhood friends, Remen managed a meager smile. "I'm awake, guys. Long time no see." The two laughed, and Remen savored the noise, looking at them for the first time in almost 60 years. Koito suppressed his giggling and poked Remen in the leg, almond-shaped eyes narrowing as he asked, "You gonna walk with us, Remy? We've been waiting for you." Remen looked at the path of cobbles that stretched off into the distance behind them. The path called to him, like a mother calling him home for dinner. He was about to stand and start walking, when he stopped, slowly looked behind him at the bloody nubs where his forearms used to be. The pale corpse of one of the freed slaves, the sheet pulled down to their chest from the scuffle, the blood pooling beneath his arched legs. "Remy?" Danny asked, making Remen look back. The two stood on the cobblestones, holding hands as they prepared to walk the cobbles together. Koito's hand was outstretched, an offer. He could leave the fight behind, go wherever the cobbles took them. He could spend whatever afterlife there was with Danny and Koito at his sides. Koito's extended hand symbolized that offer. One Remen could only refuse. Softly, Remen shook his head, jerking a thumb over his shoulder and giving them a weak smile. "They'd be dead without me down there. You guys go ahead. I'll catch up. Thanks. Thanks for waiting for me all this time." For a moment, they looked crestfallen. Then, Koito gave Remen a soft smile. Slipping his hand from Danny's, he plopped down onto the cobbles, and Danny quickly followed suit. Danny grinned, but it was clear he was trying not to cry. He'd always been tough like that. "It's okay. What's a little more waiting if we all get to go together in the end?" Koito nodded his agreement, but Remen could see the tears forming in the corners of his eyes. Kneeling down and smiling at them both, Remen wiped their tears away and set a hand on each of their shoulders. Then, he drew them into a tight hug, trying to stop himself from crying as he reassured them. "Keep your chins up. I've only got a few natural years left in me anyway. I'm tired of running, so I'm going to fight like I never could before. For you guys." Then, with a soft pat on their shoulders, he turned around and stepped back into his body. Danny and Koito watched with teary eyes as their friend walked away, but eventually they dried their eyes. The piece of hard candy between General Goom's teeth cracked, taking one of his teeth with it. Ignoring the salty flavor of blood pooling in his mouth, he feverishly worked on the massive combat droid in front of him, old wiring being ripped out and replaced by fiber optics, as an improved Death Sphere launcher was being constructed by a fabricator. He wouldn't, no, couldn't, be outdone by a fleshbag human. Spitting his broken tooth and mostly dissolved hard candy onto the shop floor, he finished plugging the last socket in and closed the machine's chest hatch. Donning a welding hood, he welded the hatch shut. Then he pulled from the forge the still warm secondary chest piece from across the shop by using the overhead crane. Using a powerful electromagnet while the droid was shut off, he clamped the chest piece in place and began welding, a look of fear-fueled determination on his face beneath the welding hood. If Gomon found out how the first attempt had ended, he'd be skinned alive as an example. And Gomon really liked making examples of those who'd failed him. The scaled leather upholstery in his office attested to that. Kaz slung her rifle over her shoulder, using her ghillie suit to disguise her rifle bag amongst the trash that had collected behind the back wall of the merchant's castle-like mansion. Eyeing the top of the wall, she slowly spun the small grapple hook in a large circle at her side before lobbing it up towards the top of the wall. With a clatter, it bounced off the small lip that jutted from the top and fell to the ground. Picking it back up, Kaz began slowly spinning the hook in a circle again, picking up speed before whipping it upwards. The four-pronged Durasteel hook sailed up and over the edge of the wall, the thin cord attached to it spooling out of her hand, until the hook came to rest against the ground opposite the wall. She hauled the line back in until she felt the hook bite into the lip on the other side of the wall. Giving the cordage a tug to make sure it was seated, she then wound the remaining cord around her left hand. Using her right hand, she wound a small amount of the taut cord around her palm, before placing a boot against the wall. The pencil-thin cord dug into her hands, making her grit her teeth as she began to pull herself up the wall, the alleyway obscuring her from view. She continued up the wall, wrapping the cord around her hand every time she grabbed a new section. She could feel the bones in her hands grinding together as she slowly hauled herself up and over the top of the wall, dislodging the grapple hook as she landed on the ground. In the light of the setting sun, she quickly ducked behind a small shed to unwrap the cordage from her hands. She grimaced as she stuffed the bundle into the pocket of her purposefully ragged clothing. Peeking around the side of the shed, she watched as two of those 12-fingered suits of armor clomped down a worn path that traced the garden. Hands throbbing to the feverish beat of her heart, she waited for them to round the corner of the mansion and go out of sight. Darting forward, Kaz dove into one of the dense flower beds that dotted the couple acres of the merchant's estate, the plant's sturdy stalks being pushed away from her body instead of crushed, obscuring her. The flower's noxious perfume made her want to vomit as she began to slowly and steadily crawl through the flower bed towards the mansion. Just as she reached the edge of the flower bed closest to the mansion, a pair of three-clawed feet stumbled into her view. Her heart stopped. She was sure she'd been found. Then, a very, very, very slurred voice from above her began to sing. It's time, such tasty wine shall divide from divide. Kaz watched as the Geknosions' robes parted, realizing she was about to get pissed on. Not wanting to get doused in alcohol-soaked, skunky gecko piss, she drew the small knife she carried in her boot, before pushing herself up and jamming the knife's blade into the bottom of the drunk gecko's chin. The Geknosion registered a look of surprise, before the light faded from his eyes, and Kaz pulled him into the garden bed before diving for the next, just as the two suits of armor clunked back around the corner. Kaz waited for them to continue clomping around their route, but they suddenly stopped. Her mouth went dry as they suddenly sprinted with inorganic speed towards the patch she just dove out of. The patch she'd left the drunk in. She stayed stock still, listening with every fiber of her being for any indication they knew where she was. There was the sound of flower stalks being crushed, before the suits of armor clomped past her patch, the body they were carrying leaving a trail of purple blood. Crawling to the edge of the flower bed, she watched from between the stalks as they unceremoniously dumped the body down a chute on the side of the building. Like nothing had happened, they continued on patrol and disappeared around the corner of the mansion. Breathing a sigh of relief, Kaz waited a few moments more before standing and breaking into a dead sprint for the chute they'd tossed the body down. It very well could lead straight to an incinerator, but her intuition told her that it led somewhere else, somewhere important. Yanking the chute open, she unslung her rifle and threw it down the chute, before climbing in after it and sliding down the smooth metal feet first. The hatch closed behind her, plunging her into pitch-black darkness as she slid deeper into the bowels of the castle-like mansion. She heard her rifle clatter off something below her, and then she was blinded as she careened around a corner and was ejected into a brightly lit room. She fell a few feet before landing on something squishy, which she quickly discovered to be the body of the drunkard she'd stabbed. Recoiling away, she snatched up her rifle and quickly took stock of her surroundings. Her heart began to pound as she saw the tubes that stood like pillars throughout the room. Humans and Geknosions alike were suspended in some strange, viscous, and cloudy fluid. Various, experimental-looking cybernetics installed where limbs or organs were missing. She heard a door clunk open somewhere, and quickly hid behind one of the tubes, peering through the milky fluid at the fresh corpse lying on the floor. It wasn't long before a very exhausted-looking Geknosion showed up, pushing a gurney. The figure was so disheveled that there were patches of purple flesh on their face where scales were missing. With the disheveled Geknosion's attention solely on the corpse, Kaz slunk out from behind the tube. Sneaking up behind the disheveled Geknosion, she pressed the muzzle of her rifle against the back of their head and growled, "I'm looking for a Martha. Tell me where she is." The disheveled Geknosion gave a decidedly sad and feminine sigh. "That's me. You're here to kill me. If you are, can you make it quick, please?" Kaz felt like she'd been slapped. Slowly, she lowered the rifle. Quietly, she said, No. I'm here because I heard you were a surgeon who specializes in human anatomy. No, we need your help. I've got 3 who won't make it without surgical intervention. I'm here to bust you out." Martha slowly turned her head, revealing a face swollen with bruises and matted scales, a look of disbelief on her face. You are? Kaz nodded softly and flinched when Martha began to sob uncontrollably. The female Geknosion began to kick the ribs of the corpse in, her sobs turning into shrieking, hysterical laughs that put Kaz on edge. "Fuck you, Guadal! Fuck you, Merrick! Fuck you, Damien! I'm going to set these tanks to destroy your goddamn precious experiment, and I'm gonna leave. Better hope my dad doesn't find out about you. Fucking rotten bastard!" Each word of Martha's last sentence was punctuated with a hard kick, her talons scoring the corpse's flesh until she stopped screaming. Martha breathed heavily, staring malevolently down at the dead Geknosion. Kaz concernedly asked, Are you okay?" Martha turned, a raptor's grin on her swollen face. No, sweetie, I am not." Kaz nodded, still unnerved. "Okay, time to leave then?" Martha nodded in an enthusiastic, slightly deranged way. "Please, I'll show you the way."